Hello, my little Chucky eggs, and welcome to the news and views for the award-winning EV Café. 30 minutes of what's happening in sustainable transport with expert analysis from Sarah. Brought to you this week in partnership with the London EV Show. And Sam screams in at the last minute. Morning, Sam.
Good morning. Good morning.
Now, we'll come back to the London EV Show in just a minute, but the opinions of the stick are here. Paul's in a car driving somewhere, so he can't make it. So who Sam is going to fight with is the bet of the day.
Oh, no, don't pick me.
I can do it myself just fine.
Yeah.
Well, let's just grab a cuppa, plug in, see what's going to happen in clean transport this week. We mentioned the London EV Show at the top of the show, so let's have a look at why you should be visiting. Well, apart from anything else, we'll be there, but we'll be there with the AA, Geotab, Plug Me In, Mobilise and Vital EV as we set up a very small and beautifully marked EV Cafe village in the London EV Show, which is 12,000 square metres and over 300 exhibitors. But what else are you looking forward to, Sam, Sarah? Sam, let's go with you.
Oh, just seeing everybody again. Isn't it lovely to actually see people in the flesh? These events are always quite challenging with meeting so many people in a short space of time. But at the same time, it is joyous and it's lovely to meet people.
Oh, definitely getting hugs. And Sarah?
I like to walk around the show when you go down those avenues and those corridors. I didn't actually get a chance to do that last year. I just stuck to the same avenue, racing to the stage and back to the village and back to the stage. Whereas this year, I'm determined. So if anybody is going, please drop it in the chat so that we can make sure we visit your stand, learn about what you do, and then please come visit us. It gets bigger, our EV Cafe Village, every year, doesn't it? So I'm looking forward to seeing the design and layout this year.
And we're all on stage on Thursday. So if you want to come and see some of that nonsense, go to londonevshow.com where you can get yourself a free ticket. It's free. So come along. It'll be really great to see you. Hugs will be on ice and you can have them at any time you like. Now then, coming up, the electric van incentives that are needed as the outlook for registrations is, we'll get there in a minute. Used car values have fallen further following a 4.2% drop in October, and it's much worse for EVs. Electric vehicle insurance premium increases are based on bad data. Scania's Juna is to offer electric trucks on a pay-per-use basis. And there's a call for government to support the electric retrofit of vans. And we're lucky enough to have a world record holding van driver amongst us. And we'll go to him for comment in a while.
He never mentions that. Is that real?
So I only said that to wind Paul up. Anyway, fleet demand for electric vans has risen by 19.8% year on year, with 15,500 units registered since January, according to newly published sales figures. However, following a glut of new zero-emission van registrations in September, uptake was slower in October, down by a fifth to 1,362 units. The Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders says the sales data was skewed because of a large fleet order in the same month last year. Fully electric vans represent 1 in 20 new light commercial vehicles registered so far this year. The SMMT says that uptake rates will need to accelerate as the zero-emission vehicle mandate comes into effect in less than 2 months. And we've got the plan for vans that we've been working on with partners, including the BVRLA, which will have some exciting news around that as we start to get out on the campaign trail in 2024. Plan for vans is going to be key for us next year. Sam, you love a van, don't you, mate?
Yeah.
Any official things you've done in a van?
Oh, no.
And then we'll go to Sarah to find out about unofficial things she's done in a van.
I've done a lot of things in vans actually over the years, having run many hundreds of them over previous times and doing Guinness World Records and stuff. So yeah, a little bit of experience with vans. Sarah dies. I love it.
Is government support necessary in this area, do you think, or should this be commercially led?
Yeah, thank you for asking a proper question, and I'll try and give a proper answer. I think the government still needs to lead. We are at a sensitive period, I suppose, over the next 5 years with the ZEV mandate coming into effect for cars, in 5 years' time, or six or 6.5 years' time. So yeah, there's a lot of work to do, isn't there? I think probably a lot of people might be sitting on their hands trying to work out what the next strategy is going to be. The government's probably not done us any favors there, with people wondering what the next direction needs to be in case there's another diversion, another change of tact somewhere along the way. And the SMMT make a good point about skewing of data. You know, Tesla do this a lot, not through any criticism, but you know, when Tesla registrations suddenly have a glut within a certain month, it just skews all the numbers. And clearly that's probably happened here, where one or two entities have skewed the numbers, which gives us a disproportionate view. So we're still in a niche world, unfortunately. So it's still little things like that make big differences in terms of the numbers. So it's quite hard with all the change going on and the skewing effect of one or two large entities. It's quite hard, I think, to read into the data in any particular merit. But Sarah, I don't know what you think.
And Sarah, do you think that government support should be channeled towards business, or should it be very much towards the consumer still? Because we've still got that battle to fight.
Yeah, I've always felt these government messages are a stimulus. They do help focus business minds. The autumn statement will be really interesting. But what we're heading for, ZEV mandate at 10% by 2024. So that's a bit of a worry that we're not really going to get there, are we? And I don't understand what happens next. What's the penalty for that? I mean, these targets and goalposts shift all the time because they maybe weren't sort of consulted properly with industry in the first place.
Yeah, it's £15,000 fine. It's pretty horrific per vehicle. Yeah, so it's pretty bad.
One thing I do wonder, John, is we've said for many years frustrations around in the car world, around the dealerships and the way that they have inevitably been pushing non-electric vehicles for sales targets and other reasons, and that can't continue, really, can it? Because if the manufacturers are starting to be pushed to produce a certain proportion of vehicles that are electric, that's going to have to trickle through in those at the sales end, with the big fat fancy ties and cheap suits that are selling vehicles to people on forecourts. They're going to have to start to change their behaviour a little bit and start to push more EVs, because that's what the big boys will be asking them to do.
And I'm sure the girls in cheap suits and big fat ties in car dealerships will be thrilled.
In one sentence, horrific stereotyping there. But okay.
Sorry. We can only apologise for Sam, but if you tune in, you must know by now he's got opinions and he uses them. Let's say hello to some people. Richard H. Oh, I say, how secretive you are. Jamie Fretwell from Mercedes-Benz Trucks. Nick Hansel. Varun Gandhi. Hello, mate. Karen Mull from Europe Car. Love you lots. Claire Leclerc. Gorgeous to see you. Hope you can make it to the Net Zero conference on Wednesday that I'm chairing in Westminster. Sarah Gray. Hello, Flower. How are you? Ron Godfrey. Ian Roberts. Mark Sherry. Brennan Yasmin Jeffries. David Cornish from Chile Milton Keynes. See, I was sold a dummy there. Thought he was Cornish and he wasn't. Dan Martin, Ashley Bannister, LinkedIn user. Bless you for joining us yet again. Esther Jones from the AA. Hello. Mark Main, Joel Grisman, Rachel Lewis, Andrew Walker, Ron Godfrey, Laura Hustwick Wilkes. Laura. Now then, interesting bit of news about, things, life, the universe and everything. Pleased for you. Rob Dustin, Pam Hanlon, hello Power, Richard Bulemia, now Rick Bulemia, our wonderful videographer, filmer, photographer, great guy from Generate Media. Look him up. He's about 5'2". Jim Blair, hello Jim. Gemma Lovett from Barbados. Hopefully it's sunny there. Matthew Ling. Mohammed Jamal, bless you. UAE, good on you. Wayne Dunn, Thomas Edwards, Scott Bradley, the list goes on. Carl Elliott, Gary Comfort. Thanks for joining us, everybody. As I say every week, but I genuinely mean it every week. Without you, this show would be three people talking in a cupboard. Now then,
there was a comment there that made me laugh. It said we're talking about vans loads and there's no Paul. Maybe we should do our best impression of Paul.
No, let's hang on. I can do a ginger beard.
That works. Go on then.
Worth a try. Oh, vans. Auto Trader says that in October, the supply of EVs under a year old was up 48.1% year on year. So the supply was up 48%, with the average values of EVs within this cohort down 11.4% year on year. Lots of information in this article. Used EV prices across all age groups were 31,787, down 20.5% year on year in October. Now that's huge, and there's lots of statistics that I could read out about that, but fundamentally now is the time to buy a used EV. Yes, Sarah?
Yeah, obviously I got the impression there's not that many on the market, because I was wondering about this and whether that initial fluctuation of the new EVs is obviously the early adopters saying, well, I really enjoyed my 100-mile range car, so I'll sell that now and get a 300-mile range car. But now that people have got 300-mile range cars, I don't think anyone's selling them. I don't want to lose mine. I absolutely adore it. I've had it over a year and a half now. So they've got no appetite now to move that vehicle on. Whereas my previous 3, I was quite happy to move those on. So yeah, I think I'm quite happy now. I can't imagine selling it or getting rid of it for the next year and a half again. 3 years probably.
There does seem to be an interesting commercial proposition developing, though, which is the leasing and subscription of used vehicles. Sam, do you see that as a market which is likely to grow and grow? Because these vehicles are just going to sit there otherwise.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Sarah makes a good point. I mean, I jumped from a 100-mile car to a 300-mile car, and there's a big leap, and it would be difficult to think about using a vehicle with lower range these days, and a lot of the second-hand market is in that 150-mile mark. The residual values is a very sensitive subject, particularly, unfortunately, people like Onto, who have suffered a demise as a result of residual values killing their business model. So, yeah, it's a sensitive market. We'll see what happens, I guess. I think there is a bit of legacy here, as there always is in all industries, and there's a bit of technological legacy. And I fear that there will be a swathe of vehicles which perhaps are not suitable or just don't feel like they are up to spec with the current sort of modern performance, and therefore may struggle to be able to shift. But we'll see.
Absolutely fascinating comments in the box. Scott Bradley, electric fastest selling fuel type. David Cornish, second EVs sell from the forecourt quicker than any other fuel type. Max 26 days. So what we'll do is we'll look at this story in a month's time. Let's see what happens to the numbers. I hope you're right, because that's quite worrying if we've got lots of stock sitting on forecourts. But your anecdotal evidence suggests that it's not. Sarah, did you have something?
I did actually. Anecdotal evidence took the words right out of my mouth. My friendship circles have long been sceptical of the EV movement, partly because of budget. So they've been like, how on earth am I going to afford one? So in the last sort of month, I've seen 2 of my friends sell what they were going to keep forever. They wanted to keep their diesels forever because they felt they'd already paid back the carbon on purchasing it, all those usual arguments. Well, now they've seen the sense. So they've got sort of second-hand lease, 100-mile range suits them perfectly because they're just shuttling back and forth to Gloucester or maybe to the school. So those that almost a third-time purchase are now being bought again. So they've bought almost a 4 or 5-year-old car now. So I'm curious to see what happens to those. By the time I give my car back, it's going to have minimum 75,000 miles on it. So I'd be really interested to know what the residual value of my beaten up workhorse will be. One careful owner.
Yeah, right. Richard H has corrected his name, and it's Richard Hallett. Richard, thank you for doing that, sir. Don't do it again. Right, let's move on. Insurance premiums on electric vehicles are being hiked by some firms based on incorrect and irrelevant information, according to the Association of Fleet Professionals. The trade body's calling for fleet decision makers to work with their insurers so that they understand the degree of risk surrounding EVs better. And essentially, this story is about some insurance companies allegedly taking the cost of repairing a Tesla and straightlining it for all electric vehicles. So if you get damage to something they don't really understand yet, they're saying, well, Tesla costs X, so we'll apply that to everybody. Now, we've got Stephen Williams and Nicola Richmond from Direct Line Group joining us on the Wednesday webinar at 12 noon. And we can put this question to them. How do they look at insurance premiums for electric vehicles? Because it's really interesting. And I know certainly, again, anecdotally on Facebook, I've seen lots of comments about variation in premiums. Any sense of what's going on in the marketplace, Sam?
The only sense I've got is when my rear window got smashed, it's cost £4,000 to be repaired, which is an eye-watering amount of money. But that's got nothing really to do with it being electric. That's just because it's a complicated piece of glass and paneling. It's a dark art, isn't it? Insurance, and I don't know whether or not vehicles that are electric have greater risk factors based on the battery containment and the motors, etc., relative to the combustion engine, because all the other bits are the same, right? Ultimately. And yes, there's some considerations, I believe, in terms of the way you get cars resprayed because of the ovens that they go in, and they can only be a certain temperature due to the batteries. So there's obviously nuances that affect EVs, but certainly this flat lining is ludicrous, because like in all vehicle types, there is bound to be like a price disparity between repairs of different vehicles. So if everything is being used at the bar that is Tesla, which is probably quite high, then that's definitely a concern.
One of our viewers is almost certainly flatlining, Gary Comerford. He's just said that his last renewal just came through. 360 last year, 640 this year. That's absolutely eye-watering in terms of an increase. Sarah?
So I had a Kia e-Niro, I've had an MG, I've had all sorts, but the MG ZS EV was like 500 quid to insure. The e-Niro was about 600 pounds to insure. My Tesla is 16 to 1700 pounds. And the actual ticket value of that's the same. They're still parked on the road. They're still in a village. They're still in a nice postcode area. But to have it treble is eye-watering enough. And I just couldn't believe it. But I can't get out of it. So Gary, should we talk about how painful this hike is? But there's other advantages of having it. So the total cost of ownership still hasn't made that a problem for me. It just hurts to have to pay that to an insurer in the hope that obviously nothing will ever happen.
Bear in mind, Sarah, you're driving a car that's twice as expensive and goes twice as fast.
No, well, but you're wrong, aren't you? Because the Kia Niro 4 Plus is the long range battery. It's like 55 grand.
Oh, now here's a great one. Laura Huswick Wilkes from Power. My parents' internal combustion engine car renewal came through, and the insurance company said it's because of electric vehicles. They are costing us too much, so we are charging everyone's premium more for it. I couldn't believe what he said. There is madness going on in insurance. We have the experts coming on Wednesday at 12 noon from Direct Line who do all of this work. Tune in, register at evcafe.org/register. You can register, come along and put your questions direct to the industry experts. Let's find out what's going on behind these headlines. Sarah?
Great comments today. The three that just racked up. David Cornish, I went from a 5-year-old Audi S4 to a brand new Kia EV6. Nice choice. It was 50 quid less, so he was happy. And I really like Nick Ansell's comment as well about the fact there are plenty of internal combustion engine Range Rovers out there who also can't get the insurance down in price. So it's just a market indicator. We have to be careful not to shine the light on it as from an electric only problem.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I guess the Range Rover problem particularly is around them being stolen.
I was going to say that, yeah,
because they're particularly easy to steal. Answers on a postcard as to how to do that. It doesn't take much. Anyway, let's move on. Scania has launched a new business called Juna that will help facilitate access to electric trucks on a pay-per-use basis. The Berlin-based company was established as a joint venture with freight forwarding business Sender Technologies. Scania hopes the initiative will clear the way for large-scale adoption of electric vehicles by removing the obstacles currently hindering the industry. These include high upfront costs, residual value, and technology risk. Juna will introduce a pay-per-use model for electric trucks, and the pricing includes access to Scania's electric vehicles, repair, maintenance, insurance, digital and analytics service. It's a one-stop shop for trucks. Sam, leading the EHGV project, has this come across your desk? Are you aware of this initiative?
Not really, no. I suppose in many ways it's just a large-scale version of things we've seen before on a subscription-based model. What I have learned in the last 12 months is that the R&M, as they call it, the repair and maintenance elements of costs associated with trucks and maintaining them is extremely high. Extremely high relative to the smaller vehicles on the road, which don't have anywhere near so much cost associated to it. But obviously, for the likes of Scania, the aftermarket and servicing of vehicles is a key revenue stream. And with electric vehicles having less wear and tear, then presumably they're trying to change a business model to reflect and adopt and adapt to a different type of use case. So we'll see what happens. But I'm a little bit nervous for them because, as we've seen recently, memberships and subscriptions is not a business model that works. And this is the same thing, but on a much larger scale. So whether or not the R&M element has a material effect on the overall here, it might do in terms of additional revenues that are associated with the maintenance of high use, high traffic, heavy goods vehicles. That might be a differentiator, but we shall see what happens.
It's a curious thing, isn't it, Sarah? Because here's my iPhone 14 Pro Max thing I don't own. I subscribe to it. I pay a monthly fee. And that seems to work on a mass market scale. That works. Is it just that we've got the pricing wrong? Is there something else? What's going on?
I think because we know trucks are 3 times more expensive to have an electric truck versus a normal truck, but I don't know because I'm not in that market, but that's what I heard. And I think that when you're subscribing to your phone, you will be paying just as much over that period of time as you would have done if you'd have done the initial cash outlay. So I hope that the business model is more about sort of access and sort of cash flow rather than the initial outlay, and then on top of that, the initial maintenance that you may experience in the first 1 to 3 years. So I'd love to know more about this. Again, thank you for putting this in the news, but Scania, credit to them, they are always thinking of the next best thing.
Absolutely. Now then, here's an interesting next best thing. Maybe 1/5 or 20% of fleet managers would retrofit existing commercial vehicles in the immediate term. I always put an interesting one in at the end, Sam, just to wind you up. In the immediate term, to decarbonise without having to bear the full cost of replacing vehicles. The research for Bedio, the electric vehicle supplier and manufacturer, sought the views of 200 fleets in the UK and France to uncover what strategies they were pursuing towards electrification and their awareness of levels of particular options open to them. Of fleet operators who were considering new vehicles, more than half were concerned that the lack of available range of the new electric vans would negatively impact operations, and 2 out of 5 said the electric vans were simply too expensive. It sounds like these are people who've never used electric vans, but anyway, a similar number, 35%, said that they would, even if they were inclined to buy new, the product range was currently too limited. Again, have you even looked? Retrofitting existing vehicles in your fleet must be massively expensive. Sarah, got any clues?
Well, I used to 3 or 4 years ago, we interviewed somebody that did this for vehicles, and they quickly worked out that it was a better business model for them to sell the kits to do the conversion than to do the conversion themselves. So I can see this market accelerating. I think it was hundreds of thousands of pounds to do posh cars, but maybe it's less than that for a van.
Well,
There's so much
interestingly,
to it.
sorry, Sarah, Chris Demetriou, a great friend of the show and who appeared a month or so ago from Islington Borough Council, has said, yes, we need to upcycle and repower more. We've done this with our refuse collection trucks and looking at other HGVs now. I think the cost works for those larger vehicles. I'm not so sure it works for vans.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, John. It's around £25,000 that they said in the article, the long detail on the article, to around 25. So let's assume it's 30 grand to retrofit a vehicle. I can't see a single fleet operator or anybody signing that off, frankly. That's a whole nother vehicle in order to convert another one. Not to mention all of the wear and tear and the additional components and electrics, and probably a lot of loss of payload as well. So I wonder what the questioning was in terms of these fleet operators. Would you like to convert your existing vehicle? Oh, yeah, that sounds good. Without any real comprehension of how much that's actually going to cost or whether they're going to lose any. And to your point, John, around, electric vans are too expensive. A bit like Paul Kirby likes to do, sees one number and then takes his entire assumption on the basis of one number, when you've got to look at all of the numbers, and then you can understand whether or not it's a viable alternative. So for me, I very much doubt this is a viable alternative.
Andrew Walker's from Bedio. Andrew joins us. He says it costs between 20 and 25,000. That's extremely helpful. I'm glad we've covered this story because I think there's a lot more here. And Andrew, if you could get in touch with us, we'd really like to understand a little bit more about this. hello@evcafe.org would be the email address. Please send us your details. We'd like to hear more about what's proposed. Chris Demetriou says we've saved approximately 100,000 by upcycling our RCVs compared to buying brand new.
Well, actually, Andrew goes on, doesn't he? A large van costs 60 grand, which has 150 mile range. So I suppose if you bought a petrol van, 17,000, 20 grand or something, plus your 25 to fix it, there is an opportunity for saving there. I'm curious, John, about your previous story, the insurance. How do you explain to an insurance provider that it was this van, but now it's this type of van? And
I'm the leasing company, right? So most fleets are leased. So how there's no leasing company who's going to approve a conversion of that kind on their asset. It's not going to happen.
I guess these are capital expenditure, though, Sam. These are local authorities, maybe, who have bought the things outright and potentially looking to maintain their lives but change the drivetrain. It's a really interesting subject.
Yeah, I just hope it doesn't become a long-term headache for them if they do commit to that, because once you've committed, there's no going back. But in Chris's world of doing the RCVs, it absolutely makes sense. In the bigger truck, bigger lorry stuff, to retrofit those makes a lot more sense to me, because it enables those vehicles to have a much longer life cycle. Whereas in the van world, I think that's a pretty risky play for anyone to commit to that.
Really great news. Andrew Walker's coming to the London EV show. We're going to talk. That would be really brilliant. Thank you, Andrew. Really appreciate that. And I'm glad we've covered the story. Refitting and repowering vehicles, interesting area. Sarah?
Yeah, just before we move on, it's worth noting that, of course, the carbon intensity modelling of retrofitting is much better because you've already had to manufacture the chassis anyway. So you're just adding in the factor of the battery packs and the safety mechanism. So I'd like to see those statistics. If anyone out there has done a study on what the carbon impact of a brand new large van at 65 grand is versus a retrofitted van at a similar value, then that'd be really interesting to see.
Wow. Interesting van chat on a Friday without Paul Kirby, who thought that was possible. Anyway, I've got a cheeky little...
Paul. You're probably listening because he's driving, isn't he? He's probably dialed in. So yeah, lots of love support.
Yeah, that's why I threw a couple of insults in just to wind him up.
Now then, I've got a cheeky shout out to do. It's a sixth story, which I never do. ZapMap has just released the best charging network table. Number 1, Fastned. 2, MFG. 3, Osprey. 4, Ionity. 5, Instavolt. 6, GridServe. 7, ChargePlace Scotland. 8, Swarco eConnect. 9, Shell Recharge. 10, BP Pulse, up 1. And 11, Genie Point. Brilliant. Absolutely superb news. And there are some real call-outs in here. Fastned and MFG in the last 2 or 3 years have really stormed the market, done an amazing job. I love MFG to pieces, think you're both fabulous. Well done. Osprey, Ionity, Instavolt, you'd expect them to be there. GridServe at number 6. Immediately I went, ooh, that's a surprise. And then I thought, well, hang on a second. You've got more charge points probably than most, all up and down the network. You are being put under significant pressure to deliver that. Am I right, Sam? That's why you're coming in at around 6?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's only a pool of 3,500 people, and there's nearly a million EV drivers. Yeah. Well, okay, nearly 4,000 out of nearly a million EVs on the road. So I'm not going to take too much stock out of those numbers, but nevertheless, we're not the biggest pool, John. Sorry, but we certainly are the busiest. So you're absolutely right in that regard. We're a couple of 100,000 charging sessions every month on our network. You're going to, you're going to get hammered for that in terms of reliability and wear and tear. But our reliability is still, at the top of the food chain. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting poll. I'll call it that. But and well done to those at the top of it. And especially I often call out the likes of Osprey because they made a material difference and they're doing a great job. So well done to them.
One other call out is ChargePlace Scotland, if I may, which holds 7th place overall, but took 1st place for customer support and also value for money, thanks to some of its extensive network of charge points still being free to use. Utterly brilliant performance because they went through some seriously tough times. So well done to all of the guys at ChargePlace Scotland in Dundee. Sarah, were you surprised by any entries in the table?
Yes, I was. Then there's 3 things I'd like to sort of highlight. One is the statistical sort of the trueness of these statistics. I'd love to know if those 4,000 who already has home charger and what is their proportion of charging on the public network versus the home charging, and how many times a year do they use the public network. So if they live right next to a Fastned, potentially the geographic spread of that is that there aren't that many Fastneds compared to other charging centers. So if it's around the corner and they love it and they use it all the time, they're going to give it 10 out of 10. So I would love to see that sort of those 3 things overlain. The other thing to say is 4,000 is a very true data set. That's a good percentage, but it still doesn't mean it's a true picture. And then lastly, I'd like to shout out to Genie Point. Genie Point are a front runner in the development of the EV charging infrastructure. They were helping local authorities way back in like 2012, 2013, when nobody else had even really got going. So now they're dealing with legacy kit, they're dealing with replacements. So seeing at the bottom of the table doesn't mean they're going to stay there. But their customer service, just like you said with ChargePlace Scotland, is exemplary. They'll always help you. And here in the West, where I struggle to charge, Genie Point has saved my skin many times.
Very good. Interesting to see that Power provide the charge card that you can use for 10 out of the 11 on the network, and that's fabulous. So on that top table, they provide a card for the top 10 out of 11.
Love them. Well done.
Pretty darned impressive. So thank you both, Sarah and Sam, for today. If you've got any clean transport PR or news stories you'd like us to cover, please send them to us at hello@evcafe.org. Andrew, it's a date for the London EV show. Can't wait to meet you. Until next Friday, it's goodbye from me and it's goodbye from them. This has been an EV Cafe production brought to you this week by the London EV show. And it's gonna be amazing. Other sustainability news services are available, but this is just funner. Didn't hear a
I
word
knew
of
you
that,
were going to do
Sarah.
that.
The EV Cafe is truly blessed to be partnered with Geotab, EV Civil Solutions, the AA, Churchill Insurance, Plug Me In, Paythrough, Zaptec, Spiri, Hydrock, Interval, Kershaw and McIntyre Hudson. We are the EV Cafe, supporting the transition to clean transport. Enjoy the rest of the day and your weekend wherever it takes you. It's bang on 10:30. Until next Friday, bye-bye.
Thank you, John.
Bye.
When the cameras
There
are
we
off.
are.